Hello, my name is Erin DeFort, and I am the Vice President of Operations with the SnoValley Chamber of Commerce. In every election, we hold a candidate forum to help the voters in every district get to know their candidates. Today, we have with us Representative Ramos in Position 1 in District 5. Thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for having this. It's great to get our message out to the voters in many different ways. I'm running for my third term. Second re-election. I've had 4 years in the state house already, and prior to that I was on the Issaquah City Council for 3 years, and prior to that in my professional career I worked for the U.S. Forest Service out of North Bend here in the Valley for a total of 30 years with the Forest Service, and then 8 years with the U.S. Department of Transportation. So I bring with me that expertise of transportation, particularly in public transit, and also natural resource management and environmental issues. So I work really hard in those areas. I'm currently the Vice Chair on Transportation, and also on the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee, where I've been a lead in many things that we've worked on over these last 4 years to help improve our transportation. One of the best things we had just a couple weeks ago was the groundbreaking for Highway 18 to rebuild the interchange there at I-90 and Highway 18, and then start widening 18 to be a complete four-lane divided highway. So we'll start heading from the interchange once that's done and go all the way to Issaquah Hobart Road to complete a full four-lane divided road on Highway 18, which is the biggest safety issue in our district for a long time. So that's going to be fully funded now and just be under construction for the next few years, and we'll have to deal with that. I've also been on the Public Safety Committee working on reforms there and changes. So I work very closely with all the law enforcement organizations, police and chiefs in our district, and trying to figure out the best way to do things. And we've been in very good, honest dialogues and conversations with them through these last couple of years as well. And we'll continue that work. There's lots more to be done in transportation, as well as our environmental work that we do through our natural resource management. I've been leading on carbon sequestration because of my forestry background, as well as urban and community forest. A lot of legislation in that area to really help our communities be most protected and have a good environmental setting. Even though they may be more urban than rural, some of us are lucky in different places they live. I live 2 blocks from the start of Tiger Mountain State Forest, so I'm right there on the edge, and I love being able to just walk up there and take off on those trails that we all love to do. And I run with my dog all the time and have a great time up in that area. So with that, I'll continue working in these areas that we need. I talk with all our cities in the 5th. We have 8 different cities that I talk to, get legislative priorities from them, the things they care about, and also our rural areas, work with them to hear what they are most worried about with the unincorporated areas. So we take that and work in our legislature to get the things passed that our district wants and needs.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to ask Representative Ramos 3 questions, and he has not had these questions ahead of time. As Washington moves toward a future of only non-carbon emitting energy, how do you balance the growing need of electricity with the reliability of the grid?
Well, that's a great question, and it is very pertinent to how we're doing things now. You know, I started conversations 4 years ago with Puget Sound Energy and talking with them because that is a concern. If we want to get more to cleaner fuels, we have to have the capacity to provide all that electricity and reliability. And there's a shift. There's costs as we make those shifts, and there's always an important part with timing. You know, you can make things happen right away. They tend to cost a little more if you do. So looking at those things, how quickly we can do that to help reduce the greenhouse gases and still provide a reasonable rate to our ratepayers, because in utilities, when there's an added cost, the ratepayer is always going to end up paying that at some point. So we don't want our rates to go up astronomically by any means whatsoever. So we have to build that. And I think Puget Sound Energy and other utilities in our state and along our borders with Bonneville and so forth are really trying to balance that act and create more capacity. We're going to need it. That's for sure. And so we have to continue working towards that as we look at the things that are helping reduce carbon fuel, such as our low carbon fuel standards we issued, our Climate Commitment Act, our HEAL Act. We've passed a lot of things in this last couple of years that are helping us towards that green energy in a nice, in a good path to make it where it works for everybody and not some people on the lower economic scale end up having to pay an unfair burden because all of a sudden it hits their rates for their daily living much harder than some of the rest of us.
What role, if any, is there for the state legislature to ease growing concerns about affordability with regard to housing prices, fuel prices, inflation, et cetera?
Yes, and thank you very much. And I was just here in North Bend yesterday with you all in the housing affordability session you put on, which was great. Housing affordability is probably one of the most complex issues we're going to have because it entails all parts of society, from just pure economics to societal norms and people working together, growth, environmental and social justice, and all those things come together. So there's no simple answer. So if anybody gives you a soundbite, 10-second answer for this, that's not it, because we would have done it a long time ago. So as you brought folks together to work on these issues, we have to look at those all together to balance that, because there is a limit of land. There is what people don't want or do want in their neighborhoods. We do have people that don't want their cities or towns to change. And if we're going to add more people, because they're coming whether we want them to or not, because I think close to 100 people a day are moving into the area, then we have to plan for that and deal with that, or prices just skyrocket because the demand is way out of work. People don't realize, you have to look back to 2008 when this really started. With the recession of 2008, we shut down the housing construction industry because of the recession. And when we did that, that started us on a path of getting further and further and further behind. We have not caught up. We have a long ways to catch up. And to put that industry back into full bore, where all those workers that work there, they've gone into other jobs because it wasn't a steady job. And so they've made that shift. So we have to rebuild that industry, as many others we have to now. So we have the talented people that can do the skilled labor, build what we need, and help make those plans within our cities, our small cities, to help them give the resources they need. There's planning, there's zoning, there's help for the affordable houses that we actually want to set aside and set some affordability standards, and not lose any of the ones that already currently are in that affordable range for sure, and then not let those prices continue to skyrocket, because I imagine you, as myself, could not afford to buy the house you're in, or many people at this point can't, and we definitely, our kids can't easily buy something in this area. We want our community to be healthy. This is not a small problem, because it's not just our area. This is across the United States. It's not just a Washington issue or a Puget Sound issue. So it is really complex where we bring all those things together. And your session yesterday was a great move towards that. Bring those minds together from all over so we can get some good glide paths into how to make that happen. It's going to take some work and some time and commitment.
Our final question. Washingtonians have become increasingly concerned about community safety. What steps can the legislature take to help in this area?
Yeah, and we've taken quite a few already. As I mentioned earlier in my intro, that we're working with police officers, with law enforcement groups representing their unions, their guilds, and so forth. We're in constant conversation with them, our police chiefs, our city mayors and city councils, saying what is happening, what's really on the ground, what is working, what isn't. And that's really important, because a lot of times people hear things, but the data may not back that up, right? But we definitely have things happening. And again, it's not just a Washington issue. This is things that are happening in that arena are changing across the nation in different states as well. So that's, again, the issue we're working on. So we plan on conversations in the next few months prior to going into session, continued conversations with law enforcement and all those folks, saying, okay, we've done these things these last couple of years. What are we going to do this next session? What's the next step we need, to make our community safer? The most important thing is to feel safe in our community. That's just a given. We all want that. And in general, we live in a pretty safe society. If you think about the other places that we are actually do pretty well, but it has shifted. And people are talking about that, and they aren't quite as safe as usual. And it goes across the board, from everything to mass shootings to, school shootings to things that are happening just in our communities, from simple property crimes to assaults. And we have to look at that. Look at the data, not what people just think. Make the plan, working with those folks on how we can deal with that and keep our community safe. Because our law enforcement folks are great. They want to make us safe. They want to work with us. And they need to be community police that are working for everyone in the community, not just one group over another. And that's why we're trying to balance that act so that everybody in the community does feel safe and get the respect from our police officers. And they are great. We can train them. They want to do that. And if we give them the training that's possible, we will do that. Big bill we're working on now with Senator Lovick, well, not quite Senator Lovick, hopefully you'll run there, is to expand our training academies. Right now there's one training academy in all of Washington for all police officers. We plan on opening 4 more. So that'll be a bill. I'll be co-sponsoring that probably if it comes from the House side, not from the Senate. But I'll be working on one way or another so we can get these training facilities set up, get the training standards so it's across Washington. So if you have a situation with a police officer, whether you're in Ritzville or Yakima or North Bend, you're going to have the same experience because the officers are going to have consistent training. They're going to work with folks to keep our community safe and take care of business as they are very capable of doing and want to do.
So now I'll give you an opportunity to wrap up. And could you start us off with this question? If you had the ability to pass one piece of legislation next session, what would it be?
Yeah, and that's a very deep question because we'll be working on a lot of things. I think one of the big ones that I hear constantly and have heard, but is really kicking into gear now, is taxes in general and property taxes in specific, because my property taxes have gone up outrageously, and that's a piece of something that just digs into my budget as well as those folks on a fixed income or a steady income. It's not meeting that. Renters are paying property tax, whether they realize it or not. That's part of their rent. And our sales tax is a regressive tax, and our B&O tax is I don't understand B&O tax. When I moved into the state 40 years ago, I was like, wow, it's a weird tax that taxes gross receipts, not net receipts, right? And so all these things, I'd love to balance that, which is a much more fair system, take the burden off some of the folks that are paying that so that we all have the ability to pay our fair share of taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't either. But we have to as part of society if we want our roads built and our schools and so forth. So, but how do we all pay a fair share of that and balance that? So I'm looking at all those, particularly property tax right now as the lead one because it's just shot up with appraisals. And talking about back to our affordable housing issue. I know mine's gone up astronomically, so everybody else's has too. So how do we deal with that to get that back down and still keep the services we want? Because as a community, we want those things. And most people just say, oh, reduce taxes. But when you reduce taxes, you're going to reduce something that the community is getting. So the question is, what do you want to reduce? And look at that. If we cut taxes here, we're going to reduce this here. And that's what we have to look at and make sure we know that how that balances out so that we don't take away something that's critical.
Okay. Thank you for being with us today. Again, this is Representative Ramos, and he is running in District 5 for Position 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.